It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, Toshiba published their financials for their first quarter for their year ending March of 2022. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking through these financials and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I got some questions to ask of Toshiba. So that's why I put this video together. But these questions are really for all the OEMs. I mean, it doesn't matter what OEM I'm talking about. The story really relates to all of them. We're in a declining marketplace and we got to shake things up, as most people would say, right? But here's the question I want to ask all of my friends in the Document Imaging channel, all those dealer owners out there. When the OEMs come in and talk to you and they do these quarterly reviews with you, and they ask you things like, you're not hitting your forecasts. Man, you haven't grown your business in 10 years. How come you're flat with us? What's going on? And you tell them the reasons. I mean, all the dealer owners have reasons, right? They very rarely care about those reasons. They just tell you, well, you got to increase. You got to increase, we're going to take away your rebates, we're going to take away your bonuses, whatever it is, right? They hold you accountable to your numbers. Have you ever thought about spinning that around and start holding the OEMs accountable to the OEMs numbers? Because I think if the dealers did that, well, they might have a different conversation. And maybe these conversations would entice these OEMs to start paying attention to all the realities around them, and maybe the consolidation would actually begin. Because I don't think we ask the OEMs near enough tough questions. So without any further ado, the first thing I want to do is I want to pull up our friends over at Toshiba. This is the total conglomerate. I'm going to give you their top line revenue number, their operating profit. Their top line revenue number was 727.9 billion yen, which translates to 6.5 billion US dollars. They did 14.5 billion yen in operating profit, which is 131.3 million US dollars in operating profit, or 2%. So the good news for Toshiba, if they were in a race between Konica and Ricoh for the highest operating profit, they won. Our friends at Konica, their first quarter was 1%. Our friends over at Ricoh are 1.3%. Toshiba came in at 2%. A little sarcasm in there, but you know what? Reality is this. You got three OEMs with 2%, 1%, 1.3% in a declining marketplace. We know there has to be consolidation. What in the world are these people thinking? Toshiba turned down a $20 billion private equity buyout, right? Turn it down. We can do it on our own. We don't need that money. I read an article recently in Reuters. Let me just show you this. The title was this: Toshiba expects a 63% annual profit rise amid calls for strategic review. There's calls for a strategic review over at Toshiba. Toshiba's had numerous problems, right? I don't need to reiterate all these issues. But the bottom line is, folks, this: when I'm looking at Toshiba's financials and I go back 10 years, it's just amazing to me, because there was a time when Toshiba, actually the year ending of March of 2012, Toshiba's revenues were $55 billion. $55 billion, folks. There's a whole lot of billions that have left that conglomerate. And today, when you look at the struggles that the Document Imaging channel has, and the document imaging industry, the printers and all that is just one piece of what Toshiba does. But there has to be consolidation. The whole conglomerate can't run on a 2% operating profit, right? I mean, we know this. They can't for much longer. They can't keep evaporating billions of dollars worth of revenue. I mean, what are they going to be doing 10 years from now? $6 billion for the whole year? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, there's some issues out there that no one seems to want to address. And so what I did is I wanted to first, before I get into Toshiba's aspirations for this year, which ends in March of 2022, I want to talk about our friends over at Ricoh and Konica and just go back in time 10 years ago and kind of share some interesting things with you. So 10 years ago, Ricoh, for their year ending March of 2012, they did 1.9 trillion yen, which is 17.2 billion US dollars. They're forecasting for this year, which ends March of 2022, to do 1.9 trillion yen, which translates to $17.2 billion flat. And so I want to ask all my Ricoh dealer friends a question. When Ricoh comes in and they hold you accountable and they ask you about your forecast and they ask you about your growth, can you imagine? Well, I appreciate the fact that you're buying exactly the same amount of money that you were buying from us 10 years ago. Keep it up. We appreciate flat line growth dealers. They don't say that, do they? They probably beat the crap out of you. And this isn't just to pick on Ricoh. This is the reality that no one holds the OEMs accountable. And the OEMs run around all these dealer friends of mine and beat the crap out of them all the time, right? Let's talk about our friends over at Konica. There is a little bright, shiny star here a little bit if you look at them 10 years ago. So 10 years ago for Konica, their year ending in March of 2012, they did 767.8 billion yen. and that translates to 6.9 billion US dollars. They're forecasting this year, which will end in March of 2022, to do 940 billion yen, which translates to 8.5 billion US dollars. That's a 1.6 billion increase over 10 years, which if you do the math real quick, it's about a 15% increase, over 10 years. 15%, but then you got to ask yourself another question. How much of this increase is acquisitions? Konicka's bought up a lot of stuff. You could ask the same of Ricoh and the rest of them. Are you growing organically? What's acquisition versus organic? I'm sure they're asking the dealer owners these questions. Why don't the dealer owners ask the OEMs the same damn questions? But you can see, folks, we're not knocking out of the park with growth from 10 years ago. But yet we still want to sit in these worlds where we're doing things on our own. I just can't even believe that these OEMs are doing this. I'm thinking most of the stuff they're telling us is just a bunch of fluff, that they're really meeting behind the scenes, and they're strategically planning on what they're going to cut. And, the Japanese conglomerates are all trying to figure out what are they going to offload, and maybe they can offload some stuff together. I mean, folks, there's got to be these conversations. It's purely illogical to think that they're not even happening. And if they're not happening, that is insanity. And so now let's talk about our friends over at Toshiba. So remember Toshiba, their year ending in March of 2012, $55 billion, folks. They're forecasting for their year ending in March of 2021 to do 3.25 billion yen. 3.52 billion yen, my friends, is 29.4 billion US dollars. They've gone from 55 billion to 29.4 billion. That's their forecast. They forecasted, you ready for this, 170 billion yen operating profit. That's 1.5 billion. Now I want to talk about why what they're forecasting makes no logical sense to me. Maybe they can explain it. The better thing for them to do would actually come up with it and do it over the next 3 quarters. And if they did, home run to them. I'll do a video and congratulate them, maybe even give them a trophy. But here's the reality, my friends. Let's just talk about this. If we look at this operating profit, and this is where Reuters was going with this, they want to do 170 billion yen in operating profit. So here's the problem. They did 14.5 billion yen in operating profit their first quarter. Okay, to do 170 billion yen in operating profit over a year, if you just divided that by the quarters, that's 42.5 billion per quarter they have to do to hit that number. 42.5 billion per quarter. Their first quarter, they did 14.5 billion. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's 28 billion less than they need to have a run rate to get to 170 billion. So now you got to add that 28% that they didn't hit their first quarter to their other quarters, which increases it by 9.3%. They got to do 51.8 billion yen a quarter for the next 3 quarters to hit the 170 billion yen. Does anybody believe they're going to do this? And if they are going to do this, and I'm a dealer, I'm asking the question, how? Is it going to be our division that gets all the cuts? We know they're a conglomerate, so the money can come spread out through all the things they own and operate, right? But if the dealer owners, are you asking these questions? Is our industry asking these questions? Oh, hell no. Hell no. They'll bring the executives on and they'll talk about the new A3s they're kicking off, and everybody has a good old time. We need to start asking some questions. And my question to Toshiba is, how in the world are you going to go from 14.5% operating profit to a 51.8% operating profit for the next 3 quarters? And if you are going to hit that, what exactly are you going to cut to get there? Now, a lot of people are saying Ray was tough on Toshiba today. It's not about being tough on Toshiba today. It's about just logical questions that nobody seems to want to ask these folks. And the OEMs continue to show up places and talk about pure-ass nonsense. When we're in a decline, we know we got to make serious changes, and we're still living like it's 1990 or 2000. Folks, you know what? I hope that all my friends will go to these OEMs' websites, will get into these financials, and start digging through them. And just dig through them. You don't even have to be a CPA to do it. Just dig through them and look for the illogical stuff. It's all right there in front of you. And then just start asking some questions, because we know we have to have some changes. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to next week. I'll be at the BTA. It's just a couple of days away. Don't forget, San Diego in August. But ladies and gentlemen, remember this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.